There were men who should never have known, and there were truths that no one should ever have told. In 17th century Europe, when knowledge was restricted, science persecuted, and truth depended on inquisitors' judgment, in sacred garments, a message suddenly appeared. Not a letter, not a prophecy, but a manifesto. A simple printed sheet in Kassel, Germany, dated 1614. Its shocking content spoke of the existence of a secret, ancient, and wise brotherhood. A brotherhood that had crossed the centuries, protected by silence, whose mission was to guide humanity toward a new era. Its name was Fraternitas Rosicrucis, the Brotherhood of the Rosy Cross. No one knew who had written that text. No real signature, only allusions, metaphors, symbols. Yet that message, a few months later, was followed by two other documents, the Confessio Fraternitatis and the most enigmatic of the three, the alchemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz. In under 2 years, a long-buried idea emerged from history to spread across Europe. The printing presses couldn't keep up with the demand, and booksellers were besieged by men searching for answers. The universities debated their authenticity, and theologians, alchemists, and philosophers went mad over the sheer number of symbols to decipher. Who were the Rosicrucians? Did they really exist? And if so, what did they know? Today we'll embark on a fascinating journey, discussing an ancient story that extends to the present and may be within us all. But before we set off on this incredible journey, if you haven't done so yet, we invite you to subscribe to the channel to support our work and to not miss the upcoming videos. The Rosicrucian manifestos did not just propose a religious or cultural reform. Behind the printed words and references to alchemy and spirituality, a deeper message was hidden. A disturbing message that few were able to grasp and even fewer dared to speak out loud. The Rosicrucians were not simple philosophers. They were guardians of a secret as ancient as Christianity itself, a secret capable of overturning 2,000 years of history. That secret concerned blood, not in an allegorical sense, but real blood, human blood, blood that carried a legacy, blood that, according to the Rosicrucians, descended directly from Jesus Christ. To grasp this statement's significance, we need to step back, way back. In 325 AD, Emperor Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea. That was where Jesus' nature was finally defined. Son of God, born of a virgin, died, resurrected, ascended to heaven. His figure was officially separated from any trace of earthly humanity. This was a political decision. Yes, that's why it happened. It involved a violent surgical operation, the systematic elimination of all texts that offered a different perspective. The apocryphal Gospels were banned, burned, and forgotten, including the Gospels of Philip, Mary, and the Egyptians. In the Gospel of Philip, discovered in 1945 at Nag Hammadi in Egypt, it reads,
Mary Magdalene was the companion of the Savior. Jesus loved her most among the disciples and often kissed her on the mouth.
Phrases like these do not appear in the canonical texts. Why? Why? They suggest the idea that Jesus was not just a spiritual teacher, but a complete man, capable of loving, of having a companion, and perhaps of having children. An ancient Gnostic tradition claims Maria Magdalena was not a redeemed prostitute, as the medieval church said, but Jesus' companion, wife, and bearer of his lineage. After the crucifixion, Maria Magdalena fled, not alone, but pregnant. She set sail from Caesarea Maritima with other followers and reached Provence, in the south of France. There, according to oral tradition, she gave birth to a daughter, and from her, a sacred bloodline was born. A bloodline, a secret lineage. This blood would have flowed through centuries, merging with noble families and the Merovingian dynasty of thaumaturgic kings, the long-haired sovereigns who, according to legend, were kings by divine right, not by human right. Among them all, one in particular, Dagobert II, a forgotten king, assassinated in a forest, whose name was erased from the official chronicles. but his bloodline may never have ended. And this is where the Rosicrucians come back into play. According to some unorthodox historians, it was they, or rather those who would become the Rosicrucians, who protected this sacred bloodline in times when the truth would have led to being burned at the stake. They hid, disguised knowledge as allegory, genealogy as symbol, flesh as spirit, but they left traces, a code that we find in painting, in architecture, and in the symbol itself of the Rosicrucians. The rose blooming on the cross is not just a sign of purity. According to the esoteric interpretation, it is life itself, older, that blooms from the lineage of Christ. The rose is Mary Magdalene, the cross is the family tree of the Savior, and what blooms is the royal blood. There's a cult that has never died, a cult that has disguised itself, hidden, camouflaged behind harmless images and seemingly Christian statues. It is the cult of Mary Magdalene, not the redeemed sinner we've been told about, but the bride of Christ, the mother of the hidden bloodline, the key to the Rosicrucian mystery. For centuries in the southern regions of France, especially in Provence, a legend has been passed down, never really denied even by the local church. Maria Magdalena reportedly landed at Sainte-Marie de la Mer on the French coast with two women, likely Maria Salome and Maria Dagobert. But she was not alone. She carried with her a secret, a child, or perhaps two. Early medieval accounts describe her as Christ's bride, and the first pilgrimages to those places, long before the official Marian apparitions, were not directed to the Virgin Mary, but to Magdalene there, in the caves that dot the coast. It is said that she spent the last years of her life guarding an unspeakable truth, but despite the stories, her official image was distorted. Starting from the 6th century with Pope Gregory the Great, Magdalene was arbitrarily identified with the repentant prostitute who washes Jesus' feet. A functional choice to diminish her figure, remove her as a companion, and make the Christian narrative more manageable from a theological and hierarchical point of view. Some never forgot, so from then on, Magdalene lived on under different names and forms, most notably as the Black Madonna. In many regions of Europe, France, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, we find ancient statues of the so-called Black Virgin, a female figure, often with a child in her arms, with dark skin, sometimes covered by a royal cloak, always venerated in caves, crevices, sacred forests, places filled with primordial energy. But that dark complexion, that hieratic, mysterious face, has nothing to do with the canonical Virgin Mary. Many historians and anthropologists believe that this is a much older cult, perhaps linked to the ancient Mediterranean chthonic deities, such as Isis, Cybele, or Artemis of Ephesus. But there are those who go even further. Some esotericists say the Black Madonna symbolizes Mary Magdalene, honored by Rosicrucians and other secret societies as a Christian icon. To avoid church persecution, this woman, dark as earth and as mysterious as night, would symbolize the forgotten sacred feminine, carrying in her womb not just a child, but a lineage, a sacred genealogy. That's why the child appears so often. It represents Jesus' son, not Jesus as a child. And this is where the symbolism of the Rosicrucians reveals itself once again in all its power. The rose is not just the flower of love, it's the symbol of blood, of the life flowing through the bloodline. The rose is Mary Magdalene. The cross doesn't just represent the death of Christ, but the family tree from which a new humanity blossoms, a bloodline that starts from Jesus and expands, hidden, protected, guarded by those who know the secret. According to this view, the Rosicrucians are not only mystical philosophers, but also guardians. Why was the church afraid of this? Because what if Jesus had a companion in children? He would no longer be just a divine being, but a man with desires, loves, flesh, blood, and an inheritance. And if there were descendants, it would be inevitable to ask who today is the true bearer of the blood of Christ? Who would have the right to claim spiritual and political leadership over the Christian world? Who would ultimately be the natural heir of Christ? A dangerous question that challenges 2,000 years of dogma, power, papal succession, and authority. That's why Mary Magdalene was erased and the sacred feminine was suppressed. But the Rosicrucians remembered and developed a coded language that reveals everything to those who can read it. Some names are remembered by history with grandeur, celebrated in monuments and school books. And then there are names that have been removed, deliberately forgotten, cut out with surgical precision from every official account. One of these names is Dagobert II, but who really was Dagobert? A king, a Merovingian, perhaps much more than that. We are in 7th century France in an era still steeped in myth, but already familiar with the power of writing and memory. The Merovingians are the dynasty that rules over the lands of the Franks. Long-haired kings, considered children of the stars, miracle workers, able to heal with just the touch of their hands. Legend says their authority didn't come from conquests or Roman blood, but from divine lineage. Some medieval chroniclers, including the enigmatic chronicler Fredegar, claimed that the founder of the Merovingian dynasty, Merovec, was born from the union between a Frankish queen and a sea creature of unknown origin. A myth, certainly, but one that suggests something. The Merovingians weren't seen as fully human, and one is especially notable for being absent, because too little has been said about him, too poorly, and too late. From Goberto II. Goberto was king of Austrasia, a region that included parts of present-day France, Belgium, and Germany. He was exiled as a child due to dynastic struggles and spent years in York, England, where, according to some documents, he was initiated into a secret knowledge, a knowledge that today we would call esoteric. When he returned home, he took the throne in 676, but his reign was brief. On December 23, 679, while hunting near Stenai, he was assassinated by members of his own court. Officially, it was a political plot, but those who wanted him dead wanted him erased. But there's a detail, a fragment almost erased, which keeps resurfacing in the underground whispers of alternative history. A fragment kept, or maybe just evoked, in a silent and isolated place, the Abbey of Orval in Belgium. Here, it is said, there was a tombstone. No official document mentions it. A stone, they say, mysteriously vanished. Maybe removed, maybe never displayed publicly. And yet on it, an inscription that still burns like a forbidden revelation. Rex Deus, King of the Gods, descendant of the Holy Blood. Many connect this inscription to that bloodline that started from Maria Magdalena, passed through France, and merged with the Merovingians. If Dagoberto had really been a descendant of Jesus, Christ could not have reigned. Not without rewriting history or provoking an apocalyptic clash between spiritual and political power. In this scenario, the Rosicrucians would act. While the official documents were being rewritten, while the genealogies were being altered, while the name of Dagoberto was being erased from the chronicles, a secret brotherhood would have protected his memory. But not only that, it would have protected his lineage. Many theories say Dagoberto had a son, Sigisberto IV, who wasn't killed but hidden in Languedoc, southern France, under the protection of an invisible order, an order that would have guarded his blood, his lineage, and his secret. Centuries later, that order became the Fraternitas Rosicrucis. In the 17th century, when the Rosicrucian manifestos appear, Europe is in chaos, wars, plague, inquisitions, heresies, burnings at the stake. And right at that moment, someone decides to speak out, but not randomly, not for everyone, only for those who know how to read. Among the symbols, Christian Rosenkreuz, the legendary founder of the Rosicrucian order. He is said to have lived 2 centuries earlier in the heart of the Middle Ages, and he is said to have traveled to the East, to Egypt, to Persia, to learn the secrets of universal knowledge. But the truth is that Christian Rosenkreuz is not a name, but a code. Christian means Christ, Rosen means rose, Kreuz means cross. The name itself is the symbol. It is the crucified Christ, the blood of the rose, the lineage carried on in secret. And yet the connections are too many to be ignored. In every corner of Europe, in every era when freedom of thought was suppressed, the Rosicrucians have resurfaced, never with no names or faces, but always leaving symbols and traces. During the Middle Ages, churches dedicated to St. Magdalene thrived in remote areas, often on hills or near springs, following an oblique line that cuts across Europe from southwest to northeast, from Provence all the way to Scotland. A line known as the St. Michael Line also passes through Mont Saint-Michel and Monte Sant'Angelo, an alignment so perfect it can't be coincidence and lacks any official explanation. And what about the twin churches dedicated to forgotten or out-of-place saints, like Saint Leonardo? He is linked to liberation and hidden knowledge, and oddly revered in places where the church sought to suppress heresies. In some 15th century manuscripts, there are also acrostics, which are poetic compositions where the first letters of each line, read in order, form a name or other specific words, or star maps disguised as prayers and invented names of saints that actually correspond to code words used in Rosicrucian initiation rituals. All this is not officially confirmed, but it is repeated too insistently in too many different places not to at least raise some suspicion. Europe seemed like an encrypted map with the Rosicrucians as its unseen architects. And finally, what happened to the Merovingians? What became of their lineage? According to the Secrets Dossier, a document filed at the National Library of Paris in the 1960s, the Merovingian bloodline was never broken. It would still exist today, mixed with other dynasties and protected by esoteric orders. It would be waiting, but waiting for what? If a truth is too dangerous to be spoken, it isn't denied. It's hidden beneath another truth, diluted, saturated with lies, half-truths, and fantastic tales, until no one can tell what is real or not. This has been, according to many independent scholars and researchers, the fate of the story of the Rosicrucians, the Merovingian bloodline, and the royal blood. Everything would revolve around a specific place, a small village in the south of France, lost among the hills of the Aude. Rennes Chateau, a legendary name. At the end of the 19th century, humble country priest Béranger Saunière suddenly changes his life. In a few years, he turns the local church into an esoteric temple full of mysterious symbols, ambiguous Latin inscriptions, unusual statues. He builds a tower called the Tour Magdala, buys books, travels, and accumulates money. Too much for a country priest. Nobody knows where that money comes from. He doesn't say, and he'll never say, but there are those who suspect that Saunière found something, a document, a manuscript, maybe a secret genealogy or proof of an ancient pact that's still in effect. This is when Pierre Plantard comes into play, an ambiguous and brilliant figure, historian, forger, and initiate. In the 1960s, he delivered the infamous Dossier Secrets to the National Library of Paris, a series of documents that tell the story of the survival of the Merovingian bloodline and its protection by a secret organization, the Priory of Sion. According to these dossiers, the Priory was founded in the 11th century by Goffredo di Buglione during the First Crusade. Over the centuries, it would have had renowned Grand Masters, Leonardo da Vinci, Sandro Botticelli, Robert Boyle, Isaac Newton, Claude Debussy, and Jean Cocteau. An invisible but extremely powerful order with a clear mission to protect the bloodline of Jesus Christ. An unbroken bloodline found refuge in Languedoc, protected by the Rosicrucians and esoteric societies over the centuries. At this point, one question is certainly legitimate. Are the dossier secrets authentic, or are they an elaborate forgery? The answer is complicated. Yes, these documents were deliberately fabricated and deposited by Plantard with Philippe de Chérizet's help. And yet they contain data, names, and historical connections that are too precise to be just fantasy. They include details that align with earlier esoteric texts, Merovingian genealogies, and Church of France records. Many scholars believe that the dossiers are a diversion. Yes, but not to deny the truth, rather to protect something, to muddy the waters. After all, the best way to hide a truth is to make it ridiculous. In 1982, Michael Bygent, Richard Lay, and Henny Lincoln published The Holy Grail, a book that caused a sensation by combining investigative journalism, historical essay, and esoteric thriller. The book claims that Jesus and Mary Magdalene had children, and that their lineage merged with the Merovingian dynasty, and that the Priory of Sion and the Rosicrucians were the guardians of this bloodline. The whole Christian story was likely created to conceal this dangerous truth. The book was a worldwide success. It was attacked, ridiculed, imitated, yet no one was ever able to completely dismantle its documentary structure. Dan Brown, 20 years later, would draw inspiration from these theories to write the Da Vinci Code, which would present the same ideas in narrative form. But by that point, the story had already changed. The global audience had learned. The most dangerous hypothesis ever told, that the blood of Christ did not remain on the cross, but still flows in the veins of someone or many. There is a legend that has returned for centuries, always with the same words. Those who possess the secret of the Grail rule without ever revealing themselves. It's a thought that is unsettling because it suggests a reality different from the one we live in. A world where public figures are mere masks and real architects of history work behind the scenes. But if the story of royal blood were true, if Christ's lineage really did survive, who protects it today? And above all, who benefits from it? To answer this question, we have to enter treacherous ground, a place where religion, science, and power intertwine in a single web, the web of initiatory societies. And among them all, the most powerful and debated is undoubtedly Freemasonry. Since its official birth in 1717 with the founding of the Grand Lodge of England, Freemasonry has had only one goal: to preserve and transmit secret knowledge through rituals, symbols, and initiatory degrees. But that's not all. Since its earliest years, the order has attracted scientists, philosophers, monarchs, bankers, revolutionaries, and even popes. Its symbols, rose, cross, compass, six-pointed star, dove, ladder, and grail, appear frequently. Too many clues to miss the connection. According to many esoteric historians, Freemasonry would be an operative evolution of the Rosicrucians, a branch of theirs, not so much for declared origins that no one would ever admit, but for a shared set of symbols, objectives, and mysteries. And that's not all. Founded in London in 1660, the Royal Society is the world's oldest and most prestigious scientific institution. Its members were scientists, astronomers, doctors, but also Freemasons, alchemists, and philosophers with strong ties to intellectual thought. Rosicrucian Robert Boyle, considered one of the fathers of modern chemistry, was also passionate about alchemy and a member of Rosicrucian circles. Isaac Newton, a genius of physics, devoted much of his life to studying the Bible and occult mysteries, especially biblical genealogies. Many members of the Royal Society believed that science was only a part of the grand project. To understand the universe in order to rediscover God's code and perhaps to recognize the blood of God in the flesh of man. But the real leap happens with the birth of the United States of America. Few realize the founding of the United States is rich in esoteric symbolism. Many of the founding fathers were Freemasons, some initiated into other parallel orders, and all obsessed with the idea of a new world order. To get a small idea of all this, just look at the $1 bill, where we find an incomplete pyramid, the all-seeing eye, and the phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum, which means New Order of the Ages. The number 13 appears everywhere. 13 steps, arrows, leaves, and stars. Some esoteric urban planners have also drawn occult maps of the American capital, revealing precise geometric shapes, alignments with stars and planets, and symbols that recall the Rosicrucians. Does this mean that the United States is a Rosicrucian project? Rosicrucian? Maybe not, but maybe they are the modern container of an ancient mission. Ultimately, the question remains whether the blood of Jesus has survived, if it still flows in someone today, and who protects its secret. And again, why does no one talk about it seriously? Why is this topic ridiculed, trivialized, forgotten? Maybe because it can no longer be stopped. Maybe because humanity is getting closer to the awakening of that blood. For centuries, we have sought the Grail as an object, a cup, relic, or lost wonder, hidden in underground Templar chambers or the Holy Land. But maybe the search failed because we were looking in the wrong place, because we searched outside and not within. One of the oldest and most revolutionary interpretations says the Grail is not an object, but a person, or something that flows within people. The Grail would be the blood itself, but not just any blood. The blood that carries a code, a spiritual and biological matrix at the same time, a DNA capable of reactivating something forgotten in human nature. Some alchemical texts from the Renaissance speak of the royal blood, not only as royal blood in a dynastic sense, but as a living substance, programmed to contain a divine spark. This concept connects to a bold 20th century vision, genetic memory, the belief that DNA carries not just physical traits, but also memories, emotions, and latent potential. If a bloodline truly traces back to Jesus and Mary Magdalene, it would carry not just genes, but a mission embedded in life's very structure. In the book The Messianic Legacy, the authors suggest that the true legacy of Christ is not a religion, but a living archetype, passed down from flesh to flesh, from blood to blood, and that the Rosicrucians, in their coded language, have done nothing but guard the keys to this transmission. According to this view, alchemy wasn't about changing metals, but transforming humans by awakening a lost frequency, a primordial harmony between spirit and body, to enable the divine man to return to Earth. Today, with the mapping of the human genome with epigenetics, with the rediscovery of the importance of resonance and frequencies in the behavior of cells, many of these ideas, which once seemed like medieval madness, are beginning to sound surprisingly relevant and unsettling. There are those who speculate, in fact, that the entire Rosicrucian line has always worked on two levels. On one hand, it protected the bloodline, and on the other, it worked to awaken it. Because, according to some sources, this blood is not automatically active. It's like a dormant potential code that can remain inactive for generations until someone discovers the right key. When activated, that blood doesn't generate power. It creates consciousness, a new awareness. The feeling that everything we've been told is just an act. That behind the scenes of history there is a larger plan written in our very bodies. It's no coincidence that many figures considered spiritual revolutionaries, mystics, or prophets throughout history, from Leonardo to Newton, have been suspected of belonging to this lineage, or at least being initiated into its mysteries. It's no coincidence their knowledge seemed ahead of its time. Maybe they weren't just geniuses, but carriers of ancient memory, possibly even from our era. The awakening is happening again. Some children are born with extraordinary abilities. There are individuals who talk about recurring dreams in unknown languages. There are ordinary people who suddenly remember something they've never experienced. Maybe they're just fantasies, or maybe they're ecogenetic, echoes of a legacy that's remained silent for too long. Science laughs at all this, religions deny it, but the Rosicrucians do not speak. They know, and maybe they're waiting for the bearers to awaken, for the blood to find its frequency again, for the Grail to no longer be sought outside, but recognized within. As an ancient Rosicrucian document said, when man can see what lies beneath the world's surface, then the rose will bloom, not on the cross, but in the heart of the one who always carried it. There's no need to believe everything. You don't have to embrace every detail, every name, every legend. Sometimes it's enough to look at the emptiness around a story to understand that something has been hidden? Why would a figure like Maria Magdalena, present in all the Gospels, have been relegated to a repentant sinner, only to be gradually erased from sermons, liturgies, and official theology? Why would the Merovingian dynasty, and especially Dagobert II, have been wiped out with such determination while others, far more mediocre, have survived through the centuries? And why? Would any ordinary priest in a remote village in the south of France have spent a fortune to turn his church into an open-air code? Maybe because behind all this there wasn't just a story, there was a threat, not a sword, but the possibility that the power of the church, of kings, of governments, was illegitimate. An alternative lineage exists, not elected by people, but chosen by nature. This bloodline doesn't dominate, but awakens in consciousness. And so, what if all this were true? If a bloodline really did exist? Where are its heirs today? Some say that some have been lost, that the blood has been diluted, that the bearers don't know they are, that they walk in the world like anyone else, but something pulses inside them. A recurring dream, an unexplainable sensitivity, an attraction to the symbol, a rejection of imposed authority, a hunger for truth whose origin is unknown. Maybe some viewers of this video carry a fragment of that blood. Maybe those who have made it this far didn't do so by chance. Maybe this video isn't just a story, but a calling. So the question is no longer who the Rosicrucians are, who has royal blood, or where the Grail is hidden. The real, final, ultimate question is, what if it were you? We've reached the end of this fascinating story that starts in a distant era and continues to today. At this point, we are really curious to know your opinion. Write in the comments what you think, and if you like the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support our work. Until the next story.